And you're welcome along to Trader Chat. It is Monday. It is just the day after the Dublin Racing Festival. What a weekend we had. We've so much to discuss, not only with myself, Johnny Ward, and FLYNN GOWARD, but with IZZY PHILLIPS, who is, of course, that racing moment, the racing moment. So I'm actually getting to know you, IZZY, through your Twitter account. You've nearly 10,000 followers, and your pinned tweet is, "It's Honeysuckle Day," which obviously means you are in love, as we all are, with Honeysuckle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She's my favourite. Love her. Love Rachel. Love the whole partnership.
What did you make yesterday?
I just thought she was just beautiful. Like, it was exactly what you wanted. She put them away so easy. Just what you want to see, really, heading into the champion hurdle.
Okay, so you're new to the show. Tell us about your how you got into racing and how much you got into, obviously, national hunt racing and Irish racing as well.
So I actually got into racing just generally through family. So I used to go racing quite a lot with my granddad and my dad and my uncle as well, actually, and we all used to go just as a big family. And then my interest kind of carried on from there, and I just kept going. And I started my Twitter mainly just because I started to have winners and I wanted to remember them. So I'd get, from weekend to weekend, and I'd think, oh, but I really enjoyed last weekend because the new one won, or, like I started to follow particular horses. And I started it as the racing moment, as just a private page where I just kept saving all the videos of the winning horses and things like that. And then I actually quite liked it because I got chatting to a few people on there, and it was nice to talk to some people that were actually interested in racing. So I ended up just sort of branching off from there, really.
FLYNN, it's so true as well that, like, it's often family that and they have a lot to answer for if they bring you a race for the first time. There's a chance you'll be hooked and you'll be there forevermore. What was your story, FLYNN?
Mine was, I used to go to my grandparents' house, and they used to have, it sounds very posh, but they had a paddock in their garden. So I used to cut the grass on their little tractor when I was about 8 years old. I'm not promoting underage gambling, by the way. This was a different time back then. And they would give me a fiver. That would go straight to my dad, and he'd stick a couple onto me on a Saturday. Some memorable ones from back in the day. It was probably around 07 I probably got into it. Was around, obviously, the Corto Star era, but I remember Go Native winning the Supreme with Paul Carberry on board. What a ride by Paul Carberry. And Carruthers winning the Hennessy, actually. So a couple of weird ones out there. And then Hedge Hunter for the National. So those are kind of my first memories of racing. But again, it's a family thing. But weirdly enough, my dad, who was into racing, has kind of gone out of racing. So I'm actually the only one in the family who's kind of massively into it, other than my brother. But yeah, that would be my story, really. I wish I could do the same as Izzy, though, and create a Twitter account solely to record all my winners. I was having so many that I could actually remember them. That would be... That would be a fine thing, wouldn't it?
My page it wouldn't take you long to scroll from top to bottom anyway. But my story is, my American cousins brought me racing. I'd say it was about 13 or 14, went to the Galway races, and everything I touched turned to gold. And there was even one race where the horse was beaten, and I left my area in the stand, and they were like, "Oh, don't throw away your dockets. There's a stewards inquiry." I didn't even know what this was. So I went back, magically found my little tote docket still on the ground where I left it. Result was reversed. Copped the lot, FLYNN. Copped the lot, and look at me now. I've turned into I turned into something anyway. But I'm still here, and I'm absolutely loving the Dublin Racing Festival. It was a great weekend.
It certainly was. In terms of a weekend for us, it was a day of two halves, really. When we look at the Saturday, it was more of a day for us, and then when we look at the Sunday, I'm sure we'll go through it race by race in a minute. But the Sunday was just favourite after favourite, an absolute battering. The only thing I would say, I know that it's been painted as this fantastic festival and all this, but if we look at some of the prices of the winners, they are short enough, aren't they? And that's the issue with national hunt racing a little bit at the moment. It's great to see fantastic horses coming out, but there does seem to be a big gulf in class between the top horses and then the second and third best. If we look at Honeysuckle at 1 to 5, to Gerhard 8 to 13, Chacun Poursoir, he's not even on his top form either at 4 to 7. Galopin Des Champs obviously looks a bit of a superstar at 4 to 9, but it'd be nice to get these proper clashes. But I guess that's why Cheltenham is the mecca.
Well, okay, so Izzy, when was the first festival that you watched, the first Cheltenham Festival, for argument's sake?
So I don't even remember the exact year. I only remember just one horse. So I was off school. I think I was in either year 10 or year 11. I was off on a sickie, which is great now because I'm a teacher, so I don't promote that at all. Was off, proper sulking around the house because I actually didn't feel very well. And my dad was ringing me like, well, I'm not bothered. The Cheltenham Festival's on. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. So he's like,
you
well,
were
stop
actually
moping
sick?
about. Yeah, I was actually sick.
Yeah.
So it was like, stop moping about. Turned it off. I think it was Channel 4 at the time. He was like, put Channel 4 on and have a bet. So I was like, well, I don't know. And I just picked out this one, Ballyfitz, Paddy Brennan. And then that was it. From then on, Ballyfitz, I think he was like 22 to 1 or something like that. And from then on, I was hooked. Every time I went to the races, I would be looking for Paddy Brennan. Then it became Tristan Davis. Then Sam got into it. He was my age. So yeah, my first big ones in terms of attendance, where I actually was able to go, was when I was at uni. So 2000 and I think it was 15. I basically went on Champions Day just to watch the new one win the champion hurdle. And I think it was the year our Connor fell. And that was not, it was coming like a train at the end with Sam, but just couldn't get there. So it was, and then I went one year just to see Q Card, and that was disappointing as well.
So Izzy's actually the first person who ever pulled a sickie during Cheltenham who actually genuinely was sick. And she probably was sick as well watching the new one, as was Nigel Twiston-Davies, who built up this horse to be the best thing ever. The reason I ask you that, though, is Izzy got into racing when it was normal for the British to totally dominate over the Irish. Now, we have a situation, Flynn, and I'm not trying to be patriotic here. I'm trying to actually... I'm trying to make the point that we have a concentration in Ireland where 3/4 of the first 3 horses home in the grade 1s this weekend, 24 horses, were trained by one of 2 people, Gordon Elliott and Willie Mullins. So we have a situation here where we have an awful lot of short price favourites, but we have a concentration in terms of where they're trained. And we even had a situation where, if you're talking about ownership, Enda Bulger didn't think he won with Birchdale in the handicap chase because he was looking at the wrong JP McManus hat throughout the race. So we have issues with the concentration at the top, and we've an awful lot of short price favourites. But as I'm looking at Cheltenham betting this evening, we're going to give 3 tips each for Cheltenham, myself, Izzy and Flynn. They're going to be an awful lot of short price favourites. Unfortunately, it's not good for racing.
No, it's not. Luckily, on the first day of the Dublin Racing Festival, it was spread out a little bit. Should we spin through the card now, Johnny?
Sure, let's go. So we started off, seems a long time ago now, but we start off, let's talk about Manila Cacooner.
Yeah, so Manila Cacooner, what a fantastic ride by Danny Mullins here. Stole it from the front. Grand Jury was the bogey for us here at Star Sports. So Grand Jury was the one that we wanted to beat. And I actually listened to one of the podcasts that Izzy's on, a different podcast, and she actually put up Grand Jury, I think. So Grand Jury was the loser for us. Well back late on into 130 from 9 to 2. The big mover for Cheltenham, though, has been Manila Cacooner. And that's actually probably going to be one of my tips later on, to be honest. Made a terrible mistake at the second last under Jack Kennedy. Stayed on really, really well. Looks an absolute boat of a horse in the nicest possible way. But that will really suit the Albert Bartlett as they get to Cheltenham. That's 6 to 1 from 10s for the Albert Bartlett in March. And the winner of the race was 8 from 16s. But a decent start for us in the Dublin Race Festival at 11 to 1, Johnny.
Manila Cacooner jumped unbelievably well, Izzy. It was one of these things I was like, I don't think this horse should ever actually jump fences because he jumps hurdles that well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I was looking at the race, it was Hollow Games, I think. Even though I put up Grand Jury myself, it was Hollow Games that I was most actually disappointed with in terms of the run. Faded so badly on the run in. And then I was looking at his festival entries as well, and you've got to think that it's going to go for the Ballymore rather than the Albert Bartlett, because it doesn't look like he wants any further because he faded so badly.
Totally. And I actually think he was kind of priced a bit on hype as well, because his Naze form didn't give him anything over your selection, who, just like a lot of the Bromhead horses, disappointed. But the jumping of I know you said Danny Mullen painted Flynn, the jumping of the winner was unbelievable. This brings us to Vauban. He did an awful lot wrong. I really fancied Field Door in the juvenile race. Vauban is not in a million years going to go off 9-4 at Cheltenham. Himself and Pied Piper will go off something like 11 to 10 each or 2, forget the rest.
Potentially. I mean, just in terms of this race, it was a great result for us. Vauban. The Field Door was very, very well backed, obviously following you in, Johnny, and would have been a very solid loser. Like I just said, Vauban 94 from 7 to 2 for the Triumph Hurdle. It's pick 'em at the moment between Vauban and Pied Piper, both at 9-4. You're 6 to 1 bar. That is Field Door. I thought he just looked a bit one pace filled, or out of the two, out of Pied Piper and Vauban, I definitely want to be on Vauban. Purely for the fact that when they ran first time out, nobody seemed to speak about this either. When they clashed first time out, I just thought the Vauban was so unlucky not to beat him. He absolutely walked through the last. Pied Piper winged it, and then he was getting to him all the while at the end. I thought the way he went through the race was just absolutely fantastic, and he looks a horse with proper promise.
Doesn't jump that well, though, and looks like he wants to go right-handed.
Yeah, possibly, but I feel like with these horses with proper class, they just get away with it. Such a long run in at Cheltenham, I think that he would definitely be the one for me if you were to pick out him or Pied Piper at the 9 to 4 mark for the Triumph.
Okay, that brings us on to Blue Lord. This was a brilliant race, Izzy. I think Riviere de Tel was possibly a little bit unlucky not to get awarded in the stewards room, because we have, I guess we do favour the first past post here, but the interference at the last is quite substantial. I love the way she was rallying all the way to the line, and she's just a beautiful mare.
Yeah, I think that Riviere de Tel was the one to take out the race, to be completely honest with you. Holds an entry in the Arkle, and I really like the look of that run. It was a proper shuddering error at the last, and I had actually tipped up Haut en Couleur, and I was really disappointed because obviously you get that fall, so you know it's that whole never know game. But yeah, for me, I totally agree. Riviere de Tel, I think, was actually quite unlucky in this case not to get that one in front of his name.
Yeah, and I think in fairness, Jack Kennedy spoke about this yesterday as well. He thought she was a bit unlucky not to get the race. I've never warmed to Blue Lord, I have to say. I lumped on him at Punchestown when he couldn't beat his stablemate, the filly, who's disappointing, actually, I thought, yesterday, despite the fact Paul Townend was riding that day. He's now 3 from 3 over fences, but for me, I don't know. I actually can't be wowed by the Arkle at the moment. And this brings us to Conflated. Now, was this a result or was this a result?
Absolute turn up for the books here, Johnny. 18 to 1 Conflated going in and doing the business. For the brand ambassador, David Russell, which I'll just slip in there as well. Assyrian FLYNN was punted into favouritism. That tells you all you need to know about this race, I think.
Couldn't agree more.
And I'm not trying to slander Assyrian FLYNN, although I am really. Assyrian FLYNN and Frodon were the losers for us. Conflated was actually backed in for the Gold Cup after the race as well, into 11 to 1 from 66 for the Gold Cup. Wouldn't be for me. And the one, interestingly, from the race has been picked out for the Gold Cup in terms of support is Manella Rindo, into 11 to 2 from 7 to 1. It looked like a perfect prep. And Cheltenham just might be the trap from Manella Rindo. It's never kind of come to life here at Leopardstown either. That might just be the trap from Manella Rindo. And one other to take up in the race would be Janadil, but that's for the Ryanair at 12 to 1. So punters are obviously thinking that it's going to come back and trip a little bit for the Ryanair on the Thursday around the 12 to 1 mark. But Conflated was a fantastic result for us on the first day.
Got to give you a special mention to the Magnificent Seven: Blue Lord, Vauban, Galopin Des Champs, Gerhard, Honeysuckle, Facile, Vega, and Chacun. How many of these 7 from the DRF will win any race at the Cheltenham Festival? 4 or more, 5s, 5 or more, 20 to 1, 20 to 1. So check out the Starsports website for that. And I got to mention the performance of Bill Esdale in the Zoom room with Davy Russell. Both of us gave Conflated a good mention. Bill, he was all over the winner. Who's parties? What's the name of the filly that won on the first on Sunday? I'm actually just lost my train of thought here. The filly that won the first race for Davy Russell,
around 15 to 8.
Party Central.
Yeah, that's the one.
Party. Yeah. So he was all over that, and it was a brilliant performance by Bill on the Zoom room. And in fairness to Davey, he gave Conflated a good mention as well, which was a little bit surprising because he's often negative about horses that are far shorter. Right, I gotta get to probably the most impressive winner of the entire week. Izzy, if you don't like Facile Vega, there's something very, very wrong with you. By walk in the park, out of Vega, what a performance on Saturday.
It was so impressive. It's actually, I've watched Honeysuckle back a couple of times, but Facile Vega, I think, is probably my most watched replay from the weekend.
Yeah.
Just absolutely so impressed. I've seen someone online as well put the video side by side with Kilcrup from 2021. Wow. I mean, like, it's really imperious. Just the whole jump, just the whole kind of, the way he goes away, it's just so easy, just effortless. So effortless. It's just lovely viewing. Like you say, it's one of those sad kind of really short price favourite things again, but I just think when you're watching a horse that's just that good, there is an element of just enjoying watching just how good he really was. So yeah, very similar to Kilcrup. And I just want to know who is sourcing Willie Mullins bumper horses, because they are absolutely insane.
Well, the Willie Mullins bumper horses this year, if they raced against each other at home, it could be one of the best races you'll see like this decade, not to mind the season. It's absolutely bonkers. And Mercury, who run on Tayeste's day, is supposed to be sensational. There have two or three others as well who look very, very good. And I presume now he's actually odds on for the Cheltenham bumper, Flynn, which I'm going to oppose him for the Cheltenham bumper with something else, which I'll get to anon, but he's an odds on shot now, is he?
He's tips on, so 10 to 11 for Facile Vega. American Mike is out to 3 to 1, so it was out to 3 to 1 from 11 to 4 straight after the race. Mercury, as you just mentioned, in the Mr. Blobby colours, is 6 to 1. I thought Mercury was really impressive the other week, to be honest, and I thought that he was going to short more than he actually did. Interesting that Paddy Power bet for a 14 about Mercury. We're obviously 6 to 1, and 6 to 1's pretty general, to be honest. So that's an interesting one, whether they think, obviously, having the Irish connections there potentially, whether they think that Mercury's going to skip the champion bumper and maybe go for something else over your side of the pond. So that's a potential. And then Redemption Day's in there. I know that Patrick Mullins was waxing lyrical about Redemption Day. So it does seem like a bumper for Willie Mullins. But Facile Vega was performed to the weekend for me. So visually impressive, just like Izzy said. He would definitely be the one for me. But after day one, Johnny, it was 1-0 to the bookmakers. But I'll just hand back over to you to give us your champion bumper selection.
It's actually American Mike at 3 to 1, just because I think, and I'm kind of going on reputation here because it's very hard to know how good he is. But Gordon Elliott likes him so much. He thinks he gave him to me as his horse of the year. He says he's a proper horse, goes straight to Cheltenham, and you're getting 3 to 1 because of the. I'm looking at his knee action. I think he might prefer a little bit of ease in the ground, Facile Vega, but I am opposing him with reluctance. Just in terms of the two of them, I think American Mike is so good that it might be value yet. But anyway, Sunday was an absolute bloodbath.
It certainly was. I mean, starting off with the 120 Galopin Des Champs. Wasn't quite performance of the weekend for me, but he has really impressed me, Galopin Des Champs, to be fair. It just makes you think how well in he was last year at Cheltenham. He's coming out and doing this stuff in novice races now, how well in would have been last year. Very poor result for us to get going on day two, and it's just started the accumulators off. I saw a lot of people on Twitter talking about it. The Accas just went off to an absolute flyer with Galopin Des Champs. Was the only loser in the race, into 15 to 8 from 5 to 2 for the Turners, so that's a 2.5 mile novice chase, and into tips on 10 to 11 from 6 to 5 for the festival novice chase. Trying to keep up with all these race names for Cheltenham is a task in itself.
I'm really struggling with those.
Honestly, preview nights this year are going to be an absolute bloodbath, aren't they? Opposition-wise, you'd have to think it probably goes to the 3 mile race. Willie has previous in these races, Don Poli, etc., of a similar age to Galopin Des Champs as well when they went for the race. So you'd think it's probably going to end up in that. I know he's been kind of kept to the 2.5 mile so far, but you've got to be taking on Bob Olinger and all those types. And even Long Press was impressive at the weekend. I know they're not going to go running from Long Press, but when you have a look at the 3 mile division compared to the 2.5 mile division, it's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah, Long Press will end up taking on Bob Olinger. I think that'll be a very interesting race. I can't see Galopin Des Champs staying over that trip, and I think he wants 3 miles anyway. This was an amazing watch, Izzy, because I think I'm not mad on the camera work, to be honest, at some of these race meetings that they kind of have that evolving camera now turning all the time. I think it's hard to tell at times, but you could definitely tell this horse does wear his heart on his sleeve at his fences. Yeah,
do you know, I did think that actually. I was thinking, have I just had one too many glasses of champagne already? Or am I feeling a little bit on the wobble here when I was watching the coverage? I was actually. To be honest with you, my takeaway from this race was not necessarily Galopin Des Champs. I want to just have a really honourable mention for Master McShee, who was the angle of the race each way. Yeah. What a trier. What an absolute trier to keep going there as well. I just thought he was the takeaway from the race for me. And interestingly, no entries at the festival.
I was talking to his trainer yesterday. He doesn't go to Cheltenham. The trainer will go to Cheltenham. The horse doesn't. He's basically a fella who deals in tractors. He got this horse. He took up training for a bit of a laugh later in his life. He got this horse with a wind problem, subsequent bleeder. Got him for very, very little, if nothing. And he's turned into a superstar. Second to Galopin Des Champs. Battered everything else in the race. It was a great, great story. Chacun Poursuit Flynn. I thought this horse was a great bet. Simples. If he runs his race, he wins this. Simple as, and he was available at nearly even money this time last week.
I know, and when Chacun Poursuit runs over your side of the pond, he just seems to win, doesn't he? He seems to have a real issue. I know he's not had a huge sample size of the 2 runs, but when he comes over to our side of the pond, he does seem to struggle. But over there, it does seem a foregone conclusion. Weirdly, on the singles bit for us, Captain Guinness was the worst result, and Chacun Poursuit was a taker in the book. But in terms of the Accas, again, they were just rolling up here. That was the 4 to 9, and now the 4 to 7 was obviously bigger prices earlier on when you were talking, Johnny. I'm sure you snapped up some 8 to 11, maybe even a bit of 10 to 11 early doors. Now 6 to 1 from 10s for the champion chase. Like you said, I wouldn't trust him when he's travelling. I still think that Moving Egg was a solid each way bet in the race for the champion chase, but we'll come on to some of those races later.
Yeah, and obviously Sir Gerhard got the job done, and Honeysuckle as well. Honeysuckle's price was down to the fact that I think there's still a bit of a concern about the yard form, because she's never been beaten. She was available at 1 to 5, even though she's basically a 20 to 1 on shot in that company. All she had to do was run her race. Any moments concern at all, Izzy?
I mean, not in the race at all. I do get what you're saying though about the trainer form. Henry de Bromhead just hasn't seemed to be particularly firing. I mean, we've got a couple of debates obviously going on with trainer form at the moment, because you've got to look at a couple of other runners over the weekend in Grenadine and Frodon as well. And
so bad.
Obviously an interesting choice by Bryony to obviously go up the inside like that as well. It was clear that the ground had gone against them. They weren't completely happy with the ground. So it's not all just to do with, potential trainer form at the moment. I know that there was an article out today that Paul's testing the hay. So we'll have to see. I know he had a similar thing a few years ago where potassium levels had dropped or something in the hay. So, I mean, you could have a similar thing going on at Henry de Bromhead's, but I think where Honeysuckle's concerned, I don't think it makes any difference at all, because I just think her class just outshines any potential kind of niggling concerns you might have there with the trainer form. I think she's nailed on for the champion hurdle, really.
She is. It's just, and it's a race that really, really lacks depth. Maybe Appreciated will take her on, but nothing else is anywhere near her ability. Simple as that. If she turns up in the day, she'll win. She's now a record breaker. Just on Sir Gerhard, Flynn, his jumping was a bit of a mixed bag compared to his maiden hurdle performance. I envisage this horse stepping up to the Ballymore, to be honest. I think he's going to avoid a couple of stablemates, one of them I'm going to mention subsequently. What did you make of it?
Can I just dive back to Honeysuckle really quickly? Sorry to go back to the feature on the Sunday, but I thought she ran a bit flat. Which obviously says how good she is, because she's obviously pulverised them. But I thought she looked flat. She didn't.
Sorry, bear in mind now, Zana here absolutely ploughed through the first. Echoes in Rain just like literally found absolutely nothing. She's the filly that beat Blue Lord at Punchestown last year. Like by Honeysuckle standards, she did the job, but she was no way flashy.
Yeah, but that would worry me going to Cheltenham.
Right.
I mean, the closest she's come to getting beat, she obviously beat Ronald Pump, I think, half a leg when she wasn't on a going day. And she obviously beat Benny de, but Benny de wasn't viewed as like a well beat. It wouldn't be odds on for a champion hurdle. So I would be a little bit worried if Appreciated turned up for the Honeysuckle kind of fans. She ran a little bit flat, and we do know that with these mares, when they go off, like with the ill fate, obviously Snowfall last year, and we have seen a bit of other mares as well. So it's just one to bear in mind if you are ploughing in at short price the Honeysuckle for the champion hurdle, although we'll obviously be inviting you in. 8 to 13, actually 4 to 7 now from 4 to 6 for the champion hurdle, Honeysuckle, and then I think it's 7 bar, and that is Appreciated. Sorry, I did just want to chime in quickly there for Honeysuckle, but Gerhard.
Well, to be fair, I certainly hope Appreciated runs in the race, because it's obviously a slight irony now that he's not over fences, because he'd be favoured for the Arkle. You'd imagine if things went the way you'd imagine they would have with his stablemate Fernie Hollow out. So Gerhard, I was still very positive about what he did here. He's jumping. A couple of hurdles were quite poor. He might have been a bit leery in front. Hell of an engine, this horse.
I thought he was good. With Sir Gerhard, he was the one out of the 4 kind of short ones, obviously with the first 3 going in. He was the one of the 4 that I really wanted to take on, going in at 8 to 13. Was the final favourite in the coffin rather than the final nail in the coffin. Was a loser in the singles book, and was definitely obviously landed. It was starting to land the multiples now rather than just them kind of accruing up. They were landing, and we were well down on the day. Into 3 to 1 from 9 to 2 for the Ballymore, and unchanged 4 to 1 to Supreme. So we follow your train of thinking, Johnny, that we think he's probably going to go over to the Ballymore. He did this much better than I thought he would. I thought that he might get swallowed up a little bit. I'm not sure what the opposition was like, but as they were turning around the home turn, I thought that he might come back some a little bit, but he didn't. He absolutely decimated the field. I've got that niggling thing in my head when I go back to the bumper and I just feel Kill Crook just catching him and catching him and catching him. That Cheltenham Hill worries me slightly. But what he did at Leopardstown has slightly nullified that in my mind. So he's definitely one to be looking at for the festival, and the price reflects that.
just briefly, it was another race where just the camera angle, like I kind of couldn't really get a handle. I was like, I hadn't even had a drink yesterday, and it was 12:30. What was going on? But like, it was so. I was like, I don't know how far he's ahead, how he's jumping, yada yada. Like, I bring me back conventional camera work. Maybe I'm wrong.
So what do you not like about the camera angle?
What's that?
So what do you not like about the camera angle?
Well, it's hard to tell when the horse are going into a fence because you're turning the whole time. So if you have a drone view, you can tell exactly how far they're ahead if they're making grounded fences. If it's neither head on or kind of at a side on. So I don't know.
It's a little bit Formula One, wasn't it?
It is.
Sort of like follow rather than, and it had like, to be honest, it had a really kind of, almost once I got used to it, it did have quite a refreshing vibe about it. Like it seemed really sharp. Like I felt like I was really in the race. But when you are watching things like at the jump, you were just a bit like, oh, hang on, panic, because you're used to having these certain sort of angled shots where you're basically ramping them up for going over the second last and stuff like that, and you didn't quite get the angles.
Also, everyone has a 50-inch TV these days, so we can have like maybe 2 different shots of the same race at the same time. We really do need to look at our camera angles. We also have HD, so we have the ability to make horses look amazing. And it's kind of a pet hate of mine. I think TV hasn't really cottoned on to racing at all yet. And the split screen has to be looked at because I mean, a lot of the time you can't even see your own horse in the race. So maybe that's because I've backed him. Let's get to the bumper though briefly. The 42-1 Lily de Burley. This must have been a bit of a saver, Flynn, because I imagine the walk in the park filly who was going to try to emulate her stablemate and winning the bumper in Presley was popular in Acca's.
It certainly was, and the reason it was so important was that it wasn't a 4-7 shot, it wasn't a 1-2 or 1-5 shot, it was 5-4. So this really boosted the returns for punters. So getting this one beat meant that the 5 foals went down, which was helpful, and obviously the 5th in your Canadian or in your Hinds and all that gear. So it was really helpful for us here, and obviously getting the right turn up in Lily de Burley at 14-1. Doing the job for us and turning over Willie's in the bumper was a fantastic result.
Izzy, I'm going to go back to you. No doubt you're a fan of Goshen, who did the job at Sandown. No doubt about the big performance here for me anyway. That was Long Press, who, despite edging slightly left of these fences, was absolutely brilliant in the novice chase. And I don't know, could the Brits actually have a winner at Cheltenham in any race? Maybe he'll be it when he takes on Bob Volger. What was your highlight there?
Seeing Goshen back was absolutely amazing, wasn't it? I mean, it wasn't actually on Goshen. I quite heavily fancied Guard Your Dreams. I liked him back in Trip, but just after the heartbreak of Goshen, I think we all just needed that. Just a shame that more of us perhaps weren't on. I think obviously Long Press, as we've already mentioned, was impressive. I was pleased with the win there and super happy for Charlie Deutsch and Venetia Williams. Obviously it's the first grade 1 for Venetia in quite a while, and obviously Charlie's first grade 1, so amazing for him. My biggest joy of the weekend was actually to see a Hoy Senior come back and bounce back quite nicely. So that I think was my favourite victory over on our side of the pond.
Yeah, it was a good performance. The Irish horse in second would lead me to doubt the form's kind of depth a little bit, but I imagine Sandown was a losing card for you guys, Flynn.
It certainly was. I mean, starting off with the 1240, Shall We Have One More? Another one in the Goshen colours, going in at 4-9. That one is now 33 from 50 for the Super. It was actually really impressive. I mean, it's been absolutely nothing, but was really impressive in the way that he did it. A really bad result for us there. And again, because that was early on, that set the Acca's and set the multiples flying. In the 115 Dolos, getting the better of the world bet, Venetia Williams' horse was a great result for us, actually. That was in the next race at Sandown. Then the 150 Sandown, we've just spoken about Goshen winning at 11-5. What an SP. Now 50-1 for the champion hurdle and 40 for the stayers. So still very good.
Can you just
prices.
imagine if Goshen won the champion hurdle? That'd be the best
but he's
thing
the type
ever.
of horse to do it.
He could run well. There's nothing in the race. He could actually run well. Remember how far he was going to win the Triumph by?
I know. Don't remind us all of that day, Johnny.
But this is the thing. I was speaking to people on the weekend and was sort of joking like, oh, imagine Goshen hoses up here, and then just sat there like, oh. But I was really pleased at the same time, but did not think it would happen just because he's been such a cheeky monkey. Like every time he's run, he's nearly pulled Paul Moore's arms out. Like he's just been absolutely wild. So you love to see it. This is the thing. You love to see it. Everyone loves an underdog.
Yeah, like you've heard it here first, and I'm not sure is Izzy going to get to blame Flynn or I. Goshen wins the champion hurdle, get on at 50s. Honeysuckle is going to have her first day off ever. You know, Flynn has said maybe she wasn't impressive at Leopardstown. Very little opposition, appreciate it, doesn't turn up. Goshen wins, one of the most bonkers results ever. What about the rest of Sandown, Flynn?
So Green Book was a terrible result, actually, winning at 6-1. Got his kind of redemption after going down at the first last time out. That and Rioja, the Harry Fry charge, would have really well backed on. Obviously, Green Book when they got the job done. The field would have won plenty, but wasn't to be there. And as Izzy mentioned, Ahoy Senor going in 8-11. Does it go to the Gold Cup or the novice route? I'm seeing some weird things about him trying to send him for the Gold Cup and go the Conakry route, but it's not like he's a solid chance for a novice chase. Do you know what I mean?
No.
He's 9-2 from 13-2 for the festival novice chase. Why not just send him there? Why try and rush it? I know he's a little bit older, but why try and rush it when you're 25-1 for the Gold Cup? So 25-1 for the Gold Cup with us and 9-2 for the festival novice chase. But I just can't. I can't see him going to the Gold Cup. I just don't really know why, to be honest.
I'd agree with you. And I heard a couple of people say to me today that Galopin Des Champs should run in the Gold Cup, which I think actually has a bit more logic to it, because I think he'd be favourite. I genuinely think he'd be favourite. I think they're a bit of a muchness in the Gold Cup. Flynn's not having it.
Wouldn't be favourite.
Well, I think so. Are you telling me he'd be a bigger price than Galvin, who's 9-2?
Yes.
It's the Galopin Des Champs and Galvin. You're talking through your whatever here. Galopin Des Champs is an absolute machine, and he would be favoured for the Gold Cup. Okay, if you're listening or watching to this, get your views in on Twitter. Is Johnny right, or is he talking through his hoop, which he's been known to do before? Would Galopin Des Champs be favoured for the Gold Cup? Flynn is the guy who actually trades horses for a living. I am the man who basically talks shit for a living and gets paid quite badly for it. We are going to get some NFL insights from Izzy as well ahead of the Super Bowl at the weekend. But before all of that, this is what you've been all waiting for. 3 selections for Cheltenham, starting with you, Flynn.
We'll start with me. Here we go. So if you have been listening to previous weeks, you will know a couple of these already. Newbie Negra for the champion chase. I'm just going to mute Johnny here because I'm not going to have this debate that me and Johnny had the other week where we ended up having a bit of a tear up here on Trader Chat. I'm not convinced that one of the front two in the market is going to turn up here. I think that either Shishkin or Energumene have had the hardest races of their careers last time out. And if they do turn up, are they going to perform to their max as they did last time out? They've both faced the best opposition they ever have done. So I'm just not convinced that either of these is going to run their races, or one may do, but then it opens up the each way angle. Chacun, when he comes over to this side of the pond, he just doesn't run his race and doesn't get up the hill, to be honest with you. So Newbie Negra at 10-1, he's been kept fresh by Dan Skelton. Should have really won the race last year. Hopefully Harry rides him an absolute peach this time out. But if you're looking bar those four, Alaho's in there at 12-1, he's not going to run. Envoy Len's in there at 16, that could be any price. Politolog's in there at 16. I mean, come on. So moving Negra in there at 10-1, I think it's a fantastic each way bet. Protectorat for the Gold Cup would be my next one. I really like the case of Protectorat for the Gold Cup. First time trying a longer trip at Aintree last time, won really, really impressively under Bridget Andrews. And I just don't think it's a great race this year. I think it's a good enough race to not have Galopin Des Champs favourite though. So Protectorat, I think, has a fantastic chance in the Gold Cup, and I think it's a really fair price at 9-1. I do think that a lot of the Irish horses are just priced as if they're Irish horses. I really do, and I do think there is some good value out there if you do want to find one of the better GB ones. So hence why I've gone for those two. And then the other one that I would like to plump at would be Manella Crooner in the Albert Bartlett at 6-1 for the case previously mentioned when we just went through the race. I just think that the Albert Bartlett test is going to suit absolutely down to the ground. If you could brush up the jumping ever so slightly, I think the 6-1 is very fair.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Newbie Negra is one of the worst calls I have ever heard. The fact this horse is so reliant on luck to finish in the first 3, not to mind win the race. But that's why Flynn works for Starsports. That's why he's a trader extraordinaire. Izzy, you have to better that. I'm fair to say I don't think his last 2 selections were too bad. Izzy, give me some logic here.
I'm so undecided as to whether to go for my really left field stuff that people would just argue with, or just stick with the few favourites. So I quite like a multiple. So I've got some. Perfect. I've got quite a few that I think for the multiples. So my one multiple that I think I'll be definitely doing is going to be Constitution Hill in the Supreme, Shishkin in the Queen Mum, and I'm going to be on Honeysuckle in the Champion. That's the multiple I think will be a good one, but I am going to chime in on the Gold Cup. I like Royal Pagaille for Venetia. If she can keep this run of form
I thought I was bad for patriotic selections. You're gone for the only non-British horse you've gone for is Honeysuckle.
And I quite like Paisley Park as well. Just to chuck that in there.
we need her on every week. At least there's some semblance of balance on the show. Okay, so you like Paisley Park, you like Royal Pagaille.
Look, I absolutely love a lot of the Irish horses, and I think they're going to dominate. But where we can get a winner on there.
Yeah. Did you know that the mad thing is, right? The two best races in Britain, in the two best jumps races all season, without a shadow of a doubt, were Paisley Park winning the Cleve and Chacun winning the Clarence. They were the two races that like literally stopped two nations this year. None of them took place in Ireland, and that might sound a bit mad, but Britain's actually where it's at for memorable finishes. And you're a big Paisley Park fan.
Massive Paisley Park fan. I just hope with both of those runs that it hasn't taken too much out of them. Obviously, we saw that surname Altior battle a couple of years ago, and that bottomed both horses out, and they were so disappointing. I mean, they were different type of horses, and you know, different type of profile, but yeah, I do really like that. They're amazing runs, and you've got to think if they carry that form through to the festival, they've got to be dangerous. I think Chacun for me has it won. There's obviously the whole John Bond Constitution Hill situation going on in the Supreme as well. So I do think definitely looking at the form of Nicky Henderson, if he can carry it forward, I would be hopeful that he's going to have a few winners at the Cheltenham Festival this year, and hopefully like claw back a bit of dignity for England and British trainers.
Yeah, and we're not even talking about Boris Johnson here. We'll obviously be talking about the polling station later in the week. If we didn't,
I don't think there's any dignity left.
No, there isn't. None whatsoever. If we didn't divide races at Cheltenham, there'd be no debate about where Sir Gerhard will be going. There'd be no debate about a lot of horses. So Sir Gerhard will be taking on Dicer Dynamo, will be taking on Constitution, he'll be taking on John Bond, he'll be taking on Kilcrew in the first, and that's why the 4 days and all that stuff. And you know, fair enough, the Albert Bartlett was added. We already had the novice race, we already had the Ballymore, but that's why the dividing of all these novice races and mares races and all this crap just makes it less interesting. But anyway, so I'm going to go against you there. I'm going to go with Kilcrew in the Supreme, because he will run in the race. He's finally got his act together. He wore a tongue tie the first time. He beat Sir Gerhard Punchestown last year. He should have beaten him at Cheltenham. He's going to get a seriously strong pace to sit off because of his stalemate Dicer Dynamo. Dicer Diamond, and I think he's 12s with Starsports.
12-1.
Is available at bigger elsewhere, but it's 12-1 with Starsports. So I'm going to give him Vanillier. I'm going to give him what was 4 miler, now the 3 mile 6er. Obviously bolted up in the Albert Bartlett last year. His jumping was better at Naas. He gave way to a very good horse in Statler, who's far shorter than him in the betting. I'm not sure about Statler's stamina for this trip. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think Vanillier will run very well, and Gavin Cromwell tells me today that is the race he'll go for. American Mike is a slightly tentative selection because you're taking on obviously Facile Vega, but I think he's a machine himself, and this might be a match, just might be a match, and he goes straight to Cheltenham. So I think that's our racing, Flynn. That was I actually think we should have Izzy on every week, because she's just she brings a bit of life to us. I mean, we often struggle to these Mondays, but we're actually somewhat effervescent today.
Yeah, no, we certainly are. We're absolutely fine for this as well. But what I will just say, Johnny, very quickly, I've decided that you're turning into an old man.
Yes. Well, I'm 40 this year, so.
You hate the new camera angles,
yes,
and you want to go back to the archaic days.
Yes, thought Belfast the movie was grossly overrated.
Oh, well, there you go. And you also want to go back to a 3-day festival. So
yes.
I've just decided that you need to catch up with the times.
Okay, I'm Izzy may be too young to remember this, but I'm actually, the 3-day festival is far better crack than the 4-day. If they go to 5 and make it a glorified Galway, I completely give up. It's time to talk the Super Bowl. Izzy, you are a big fan of
Green Bay Packers.
The Packers. Okay, well, that's not going to be happening for you this year. But
no.
Okay, who wins the Super Bowl?
Just rub it in.
I just feel like there's a lot of momentum around Joe Burrow, so I'm gonna go for the Bengals.
Okay, as long as I've been following the NFL, and maybe I was a bigger fan when I was a kid, the Bengals were consistently absolutely terrible. They've never won the Super Bowl, but this could be their year, Flynn. And I know you're a bit of an expert yourself.
I'm not. I'm absolutely clueless. I know absolutely nothing about NFL, I will be honest. So, but I can read you some prices and some spreads and some lines and all that type of gear. So the Bengals, who are easy to fancy, are 13-8, and then the Rams are in there at 2-1. The spread with us at the moment is 4.5 points. It's 10 to 11 pick 'em there, so plus for the Bengals if you would expect, and minus for the Rams. For the total points, our line at the moment is 48.5. We're betting to a very small margin here, so some value could be had. Over 48.5 is even money, and then under 48.5 is 5 to 6. So very small margin there. So get involved. In terms of the Super Bowl MVP, Matthew Stafford is your favourite there at tips on 10 to 11. Joe Burrow is 2 to 1. I'm assuming that would be the selection of Izzy. And then Cooper Kupp's in there at 13 to 2, and then your 16 bar. So that is obviously this Sunday. We've obviously got some decent racing this weekend, but the highlight of the weekend will be the NFL, Johnny.
The highlight of the weekend, absolutely. We had a brilliant weekend of racing, obviously, both sides of the pond. Izzy, just finally, if you are a teacher, do your kids actually know that you're a bit of a racing nut as well? And do they know that you're appearing on Trader's Chat with the Star Sports lads?
They don't. I mean,
good.
At some point, they may potentially find this on YouTube, and what will be. Yeah. No, they don't really, to be honest. I suppose obviously it's more because obviously we're looking at Trader Chat, you're more looking at like 18 plus, so they don't tend to be as tuned in to these things, but there we go.
I still think
we do have an interesting racing link at our school though, which is quite nice. So Victoria Pendleton's actually our school ambassador.
Wow.
So there is kind of like a nice little link there actually, which is quite
class. Cool. And I don't know what age you're the average kid in your class?
Secondary, so we're looking from around 11 to 16.
Okay. And even if they're 11 years of age, 10 years of age, 9 years of age, 8 years of age, or any years of age, they know Newbie Negra has absolutely no chance, zero chance of winning. Now, Flynn, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll do something that I shouldn't do if he wins. I'll do something extraordinary if he wins Champion Chase. Is that? Do you take my word on this?
Oh yeah, completely. And just while we're on the topic of Cheltenham once again, Johnny, I know your favourite bet last year was the Presby Cup handicap. We'll be having conversations about it this week. So we haven't actually got the line sorted yet, and I actually need the entries for the handicaps to kind of do the maths behind it. But once I've got the entries for the handicaps, I can kind of do the approximate maths and kind of find out the probabilities for each race for Ireland versus GB. But I think the line at the moment is you're probably looking at around 8. 7 doesn't really work because you'd have to hope for a French winner in the cross country for it to kind of work. So it does have to be a kind of even number. Hence why we went with 6 the last time. Obviously got absolutely obliterated by you guys, but I think 8 is probably the most likely at this stage. Although don't quote me on that, but I think 8 probably seems fair, and I think that you guys will probably still want to bet Ireland -8.
Sadly, I think you might be right, Flynn. It's been great having you on as ever.
Thank you.
Izzy, genuinely brilliant to have a new face on the show. I'm not Paddy Brennan, but I also am from Galway, and I hope you enjoyed your Trader Chat.
I did. It was so much fun. Thanks for having me on, guys.
We're going to have Izzy back again in the near future, hopefully before Cheltenham. That was Trader Chat. Get on the website ahead of the NFL and the Super Bowl. So much going on this weekend. And Newbie Negra, are you having a giraffe? We'll talk to you next week.